Sure, sir. So, Dr. Goyal, we welcome you for this session, and we're really grateful that you took our time for our students over here. And for the new batch, so batch 2019 knows you really well, but for the new batch, I would like to tell that Dr. Goyal is the Director of Institute of Engineering and Technology. And today he has specially taken out time to share some thoughts around design, engineering, and technology. So, sir, without further wait, the mic is all yours. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Gaurav. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
As was communicated in the message, the title of today's session is Design, Technology, and Engineering. Conventionally, people think that they represent two sides of the brain, the left and the right. That's why I picked up this picture to show that one is incomplete without the other. Okay, and we will see how one complements the other. And the engineering and technology has been playing and will play in the work of the designers. But before I start, I want to dedicate this session to the memory of Dr. Kapila Vatsyayan, who passed away unfortunately last week on 16th of September. She was a great lady. She lived a wonderful life, made huge contributions to the study, research of Indian culture, and was a great champion of interdisciplinarity. Designers of the country loved her, including your director. I'm not so sure about the younger generation, but the designers of my generation really loved her and her contributions. And they were very fortunate to work with her also. And I was for 7 years. I just want to recall some quotes by her. And she was a Padam Vibhushan, Padam Shri, and she founded many institutes. So huge contribution, wrote many books, okay, many seminal books. So she very fondly used to say that only disciplinary people can do interdisciplinary work. And this is very, very important. Unless you are very deep in one discipline, you cannot do good quality interdisciplinary work. Only those who are very good at one discipline and have gone to the deeper levels will be able to do good quality interdisciplinary work. Otherwise, the interdisciplinary work will become very superficial and shallow, and it will show up. And in that regard, the second quote that she used to say, that if you want to understand the flower, don't just stop at aroma. Go and understand the soil in which the seed is nurtured. Okay, question all the time. Just the fragrance is so engaging, but it dissolves very quickly. So if you want to understand, go to the soil by questioning. And something very particular and very important with respect to contemporary times, culture is similar to weaving. Respect all the colors of your thread. Diversity is the strength of culture. If you suppress diversity, you will kill human community. So with this, some wonderful words by her, in her memory, I dedicate this session. A great champion of interdisciplinary work. With her, I learned a great deal about Indian culture. I learned a great deal about how design and technology can interface and contribute to the social good. Here are some two examples I'm going to show of engineers who are leading designers of the world today. And not only designers, they are the leading design thinkers of the world today. Okay, first is Professor Don Norman, an electrical engineer from MIT, and a PhD in psychology from Pennsylvania, and a master's in electrical engineering from University of Pennsylvania again, a fellow at Apple, professor of computer science at Northwestern University, and a fellow of the apex body of the computer science, which is the ACM, Association of Computing Machinery, having more than 1 lakh citations to his writings, and so many books. I may have even missed some of these books. I have been good, have had the good fortune of reading some of these, not all, but some of these. And he is the recipient of the Design Guru Award that Bala announced a couple of days ago. And I'm looking forward to interacting with him in your function, which will be scheduled in November. So you see, a person coming from engineering background is considered to be one of the greatest thinkers of current times with respect to design and design thinking. Here is another person, David Keller, the founder of the design school at Stanford and the company IDEO. He's also an engineer, another electrical engineer from Carnegie Mellon University, okay, and a master's in engineering design from Stanford. He's a professor of mechanical engineering at Stanford University, and he has just recently won a prestigious award for innovation in engineering and technology education from National Academy of Engineers, and is the founder of this company and the founder of the Stanford School of Design. And the word design thinking has become very popular, and it is his contributions that have made that to happen. So design and engineering go together and have been going together since the time of beginning of the civilization. We will see that in a short while. And these are the two greatest thinkers of the design thinking of the current times that I thought I will share with you. So in today's conversation, we will focus on 4 aspects. What is the nature of design as I understand it? And other people can have different understanding. That is perfectly sure. Design as a discipline allows diverse opinions to coexist. What is the nature of technology? And what is the nature of engineering as a discipline? What all does it constitute? What has been the impact of technology and engineering on design? Okay, the discipline of technology and engineering, how is it impacted? And what is the current wave of technology and engineering? And what is likely to be the impact and what is the ongoing impact of this on design? And then we'll spend some time, what are the strengths of Institute of Engineering Technology and how can we contribute in this revolution and evolution that is taking place. So here is my definition of design. This is not picked up from a book. It is my own definition. Some people may not agree with it, but I would like to have the corrections to it if there are any that should be made to it. It has 2 parts. One is the blue, one is the black. So first of all, it's design as a word means a noun as well as a verb. So I'm looking at it as a verb, okay, not as a noun here in this definition. So it's a set of activities, several activities, okay, for 2 purposes: to conceive and to create a plan. These are the 2 main purposes. Okay, activities to conceive an idea, and that idea has to be about an artifact, it can be about a process, it can be about an activity, and it should provide some value to stakeholders in a particular context. Context is very, very important. That's why it becomes innovative. In a different context, same thing will not work. So context is very, very important for design work. Okay, and the other part of this activity is to create a plan for realizing that idea. And that plan would include a set of elements that are integrated in a seamless manner. That's the desire, that the integration of the element should be in a seamless manner, should be very smooth. They should not appear as isolated element. They should become as part of a larger system. And they should satisfy a certain requirement under certain constraints. Constraints are always very, very important to understand in any design work, whether it is aesthetic design or it is engineering design. Constraints are very, very important to understand. So constraints and context are very, very important. And a design that has been accepted very well in a particular context will not work in another context, may not work in another context. And if you ignore certain constraint, the design will flop. So pay a lot of attention to understanding the context and the constraints while conceiving any design and while developing the plan for that design. Stakeholders, because it has to provide some value to the stakeholders. What are the stakeholders? Anybody who is likely to be benefited from this activity of design is a stakeholder. Anybody who has the power to affect or is affected by the design, may not have the power to affect, but is affected by the design. Okay, that person is a stakeholder. So by ignoring stakeholders, many great designs fail, because you do not think that that person is affected by this design. And once that person is badly affected, his life gets disturbed and he can create problems because his life got disturbed. If you create a highway by ignoring the villagers, and villagers have farm on one side of the highway and their residences on other side of the highway, and you do not give them a pathway across the highway, what will they do? They will cut across the expressway, and the whole highway will get disturbed. And we have seen that kind of bad designs happening in India, and of lately there is a better understanding of that. So you have to provide value to all stakeholders. Okay, so earlier the traditional design approach was to identify the goals and propose a solution and fit that solution to a particular context for a particular stakeholders. Contemporary understanding is you spend a lot of time understanding the stakeholders, and not just the user, all the stakeholders. Okay, for example, this diagram at the bottom, the person who is involved in purchasing something, person who is involved in acquiring something, in installing it, in operating it, in maintaining it, and using it, and disposing it. All of them are stakeholders, and how they interact with the artifact is very, very important to be understood. And they must feel comfortable. They must feel very at ease using that device or system that you are designing. Okay, so understanding all the stakeholders has become very, very important, and that's in design as well as in engineering. We spend a lot of time trying to understand all the stakeholders, and if we ignore, the costs can be very, very heavy, very, very expensive projects that are created, especially in engineering, created by spending thousands of crore rupees, and one stakeholder was ignored while planning, and that becomes a problem, and all money gets wasted. There are numerous examples of that situation. In the software industry also, numerous such examples, and the software industry and the engineering industry has of lately been paying a lot of attention to understanding all the stakeholders. So I'm sure you will have a lot of coursework trying to understand how to understand the stakeholders. And some coursework would have already started for the second year students. Okay, so it's a set of activities to conceive an artifact, a process, or activities. Okay, and artifact can be tangible or intangible. It can just be a diagram, or it can be a tangible artifact, something that I can hold, or it can be a unitary object, or it can be a complex system. A unitary object is a homogeneous single object, whereas a system would comprise of several other elements. It could be as simple as a torch, or it could be as complex as a virtual reality system. Okay, or it could even be a space where some things take place, some activities take place. A space, maybe a school, maybe a hospital, maybe an exhibition ground, or maybe a virtual space. You know, so designers can conceive artifacts, tangible, intangible, unitary object, system, or space, or they can conceive process or activities. Okay, and these, all of it, the process, the activity, or the artifact, all these designed things have elements, and these elements can be natural or artificial. Designers may use some natural elements that are available in the nature, or they can create their design using some artificially created elements by other designers, okay, or by engineers. Okay, and these elements have properties, and we will spend some time in understanding this. Of lately, as the technology has been progressing, more and more properties were understood. The science helped us to understand the properties of the natural objects. Engineering helped us to synthesize the elements of certain properties that we wanted those elements to show, to exhibit. The elements that we desire in a particular system can be designed, and engineers help in designing those elements. And the designers have been using different kind of properties in different kind of work. They could be just form related, just the geometry of it, or just the form related properties, and other concerns are not there. Or they could be physical properties that you studied in the school physics. Okay, how it behaves, what is the elasticity or not, does it? So that's kind of physical properties, or chemical properties, or optical properties, or thermodynamic properties. How does it respond to the heat, or or does it generate the heat in certain context? Acoustic properties, what happens to the sound, or how it behaves in response to the sound. Okay, how does it produce sound in response to certain other phenomena? Or electromagnetic properties, or information properties. It can generate information. We capture information. So of lately, for the last 50 years, information elements have become very, very important in the design. Memory has become very, very important in the design. A lot of memory, and we have huge memory. Memory elements can be integrated in creating very, very interesting design elements. Not just certain metal, or certain wood, or certain cloth, or certain cotton. You can look at different materials. You can different synthetic materials, natural materials, and look at all these properties. And AI-enabled intelligence, or even non-AI-enabled processor-based intelligence. Okay, so the elements can have all these kind of properties, and it is how you configure these elements in a different manner, and what property of a different element you use to complement the properties of other elements, and create a new designed space, or an object, or a tangible artifact. Okay, or even an intangible artifact it could be. Okay, so we will try to understand this a little more. But are there any questions on this so far? Students, are there any questions on it, or any comments on this? Elements and their properties, and this understanding of the design at a very high level.
No, sir, your explanation was great and self-explanatory.
Okay, can you give me some examples of how different designs, can you just give me some example of how designers have used different properties? Can you just give me some examples of the designed artifacts, primarily not created by engineers, but by designers, using some of these properties, not just the formal or physical properties, but other properties? Sometimes those properties are ignored in favor of formal and physical properties. But those other properties are also very, very important. Like mirrors can be a very great element in design. So the optical property of different kind of elements, different shape elements, or different material elements can really help you to create wonderful spaces and objects.
Sir, the designer Olafur Eliasson had this exhibition, I think a year or two ago, where he used monochromatic light to make a room seem yellow, but there was actually a whole color wheel there. And when he switched on a single light bulb, which is white light, then you got to see the actual colors in the room. So that's where he played with the optical characteristics of the materials there.
Yes. Good. One more example of some property, please. Very interesting. Yes. So that we are sure that we all are engaged, and I don't want any monologues. One more student. Where maybe thermodynamic property or electromagnetic property has been used to design an aesthetic product, an aesthetic by some aesthetic expert designer, and one is using not only the physical or formal property, but maybe chemical property or electromagnetic property. Or
sir, can you take the can you take the example of the maglev train, which is a train, maglev
So
train?
let us put that as an engineering design. I'm more, of course, that's a correct example, but because that is more of an engineering design, I mean, the shape of that train, the form of that train would certainly be designed by the designers, but that's primarily an engineering design. I would request that let us think how designers, the professional designers who are not engineering designers, but who are designing things for aesthetic purposes or for some other functional needs, and they have relied on this electromagnetic. I mean, your example is absolutely correct, but that's a very large scale project. So let's talk of something more simpler. If you have ever seen some such thing, or talk of memory being used as a design element, or processor or intelligence being used as a design element, as a property of. So if there is,
I don't know about the designer, but I have seen some table lamps in which the lamp is floating in the air because of the two magnets on the upside and downside. And when the bulb is in the middle, the lamp glows up. And it is not made by an engineer.
Perfect. So that's a wonderful that's a wonderful collaboration between the designers and the engineers. These are the examples, because it so happens that the engineering, by we will shortly see, as a discipline, focuses a lot on understanding these kind of properties. All these properties, all engineers are trained to understand these properties very well, because it is based on science. So the scientists understand these properties, the engineers understand these properties, and engineers are trained to use these properties and create those elements with respect to certain specifications of the properties. Okay. So an engineer, a specialist engineer, would be able to give us a particular element complying with a certain requirement of a certain property. It is possible for engineers to do that, and they do this kind of work very often. Okay. Designers, on the other hand, use the available elements, understanding their properties, and often they will also create a requirement to the engineers that we need an element with this properties. Can you create one such element that we need? It should have a thermodynamic property of this type, that when the temperature goes up to this kind, it should change its color, or it should expand, or this much, etc. So that's how the properties are to be understood, and that's why the understanding of science at least the level of the property of the element is very, very important for designers also. If you want to become a multi-dimensional designer, that is integrating various different kinds of elements and leveraging different kinds of properties. Very good examples were quoted, okay, and we'll see more of it, okay. And as the technology is advancing, the later properties are becoming more and more important, not just formal and physical. The properties, the electromagnetic properties, the processing or the intelligence properties, the memory, okay, all these kind of properties are becoming very, very important, and very interesting designs are unfolding, and creative people and interdisciplinary teams are working to create such very interesting projects. Okay. So here is a very interesting, after understanding the design, and and here is a very interesting definition of technology by a philosopher, not by a technologist, but by a philosopher, because you should look at things from outside if you want to understand it in a clearer manner. Okay. So technologies are systems. Okay. So there are many elements of these systems that combine techniques and activities along with implements and artifacts. Implements means tools, and artifacts, objects. So it's a combination. Any technology is basically a combination of some techniques, some activities, some tools, and some objects. Okay. In an integrated manner, assembled and configured for a particular purpose of achieving some goal. Okay. So once a technology comes into existence and it is used by the humans, it alters the pattern of human activity. And not only the pattern of human activity, but also the pattern of institutions. For example, pattern of institution has been altered by this technology of internet. The education institute itself has got altered because of this internet and this Zoom, etc. What is the change in the pattern of the education institution recently? What is the change? Some student, please.
Everything is moved online.
Pardon?
Everything is moved online.
Everything has moved online. So that's the pattern of the change. So technology, which is an integration of some techniques, some activities, some tools, some objects, all put together, has altered the pattern of our activity as teachers, has patterned your pattern of activity as a student, and has altered our institution itself. Okay? By making the word that shape our culture and our environment. Okay? And technologies reflect human interests and activities. Any technology that is created for human use is actually a reflection of some human activity. Okay, some designers, some engineers have understood some human activity and have created the technology. That is why the archaeologists, when they dig and they excavate, they try to find out some broken objects or whatever. So from those objects, what do they try to understand? If they find some object in some archaeological excavation, it helps them understand, the historians help them understand the culture of that society. How does it help? Can somebody make a guess? You all studied history and you all have seen Harappan objects, I'm sure, in your history textbook.
It tells us how developed or not our ancestors were, and yeah, it gives like a history line, basically how humans have evolved over the ages.
So by looking at the object, they can understand what kind of things the people of that era were doing.
Yeah, they would guess the materials and the way they shaped it with, carved it with what kind of equipments, etc.
Perfect. So technologies reflect human activities. They reflect social arrangements. Okay, very interesting. There has been a big bath that was discovered in the excavation of the Harappan civilization. That shows something, that there was a community bath service available. Okay, so similarly in the Roman civilization, you have those stadiums where the gladiators are fighting, and also by looking at those things, a certain social arrangement that existed in that era can be understood. So technologies reflect the social arrangements of today. Technologies of today reflect the human activities of today, and technologies reflect the human interest. If we have a technology for, let's say, photography that actually is showing that people have interest in the pictures. Okay, that's why the technology of the photography exists. Okay, so technologies reflect and extend. They don't only reflect, they also extend. For example, when the camera came, it extended the human activity of painting. After the camera, the portrait became, any person could take a portrait. Earlier, only great painters and very rich people could have their paintings done. Common man could not. So technologies extend the human activities, they extend the human interest. For example, if somebody is not good at composing music, but has some understanding and interest, but is not skilled at playing guitar, with the help of software, one can still compose something. And if, learning that may be easier than learning guitar or sitar. Okay, so technologies extend human interest, they extend human activities, and they are conditioned by and the human interests are conditioned by the technological systems. That's the nature of the technology with the human society and human activities. Okay, and then what is engineering? It is a profession. It is a set of activities. Okay, that uses the knowledge of mathematics and natural science. And why does it use it? I will come shortly. It relies heavily on the knowledge of mathematics and natural science, which is gained by study, experience, and practice, all three, to develop ways to utilize materials and forces of nature for the benefit of mankind. Okay, and this knowledge is to be applied with judgment under the context. Judgment means one has to be mindful. One has to be mindful of the impact of the engineering activity. That will it create? What kind of side effects will it create? One has to be mindful. Will it be acceptable in a certain culture? One has to be mindful. What will be the cost of it? Can my user or my society afford that kind of? So one has to be mindful in various ways on with respect to the context. One has to be mindful of the law. One has to be mindful about the regulatory requirements. One has to be mindful of several constraints. So the safety of the people, the health of the people, okay, and the interest of the public, okay. So one has to be mindful of several things, okay, to use the material and forces of nature for the benefit of mankind. So we have three definitions of design, technology, and engineering. That's a point to take a pause. What integrates them? Yeah, students. What is common to all these three? In the nature of these three things, design, engineering, and technology, what is common? There is something which is common. Maybe the words are slightly different, but that intention is common.
Problem solving?
It's
understanding user.
human needs.
Pardon?
Human needs.
Human needs. Perfect. Perfect. That's common to all this. So in the design, the concern is it has to provide some value for the stakeholders. Technologies reflect and extend human interest, activities, and social arrangements. And engineering is done for the benefit of mankind. This is common to all the three. So understanding human and their needs is very, very important for all the three. Because without properly understanding the human needs and the human behavior and human psychology, products will not work well. It is like trying to wear a tight trouser, because one has created a trouser without understanding the human body, and it does not fit that person, and one will be absolutely uncomfortable trying to wear that. Whereas it fits the other human, not this particular person. So that's a very simple example, but explains the concept very clearly. So what are the activities in design? Several activities. In the field of design, designers have to perform a lot of activities. And these activities under the nomenclature of design thinking and various other such design process, design steps, you can call it whatever, okay, broadly classified into these 6. One has to empathize with the stakeholders, one has to step in the shoes of the stakeholder to understand what is their pain point, what do they expect to gain from using this artifact, okay, what do they do, what do they feel. One has to spend a lot of time in trying to empathize with not only the user, but the other stakeholders also. So whereas it is possible to design a very good product for the user, but it is absolutely a nightmare for somebody who has to repair it. So such a product will not be acceptable in the market, because the product has to be good for the user as well as for the maintenance engineer, as well as somebody who has to transport it to the user. So if the design is such that it is bad to carry, it is a pain to maintain, or it is a difficult task to dispose it of, it becomes a pain to dispose it of. If it is not succeeding in any of these dimensions, the product will flop. Okay, so one has to empathize with a variety of stakeholders, and then one has to define the product. That's another activity. What do we want to do? One has to ideate what kind of design idea will work. One has to create a lot of prototypes. So one has to create a lot of ideas, not just one. One has to create a lot of prototypes, variety of prototypes. It can be as simple as a paper sketch, or it can be as complex as a cardboard design, or it can be a full-blown building that is created as a, you might have visited with your parents certain housing societies where a flat is actually constructed at the site by the builder to show that the flats are going to be like this. So that flat is a permanent flat. It is only created for the purpose of demonstrating to the customers how it will be. Okay, so designers also have to test their ideas whether it is working or not, and then they have to participate with the implementation teams and see that it is implemented. Like for example, architects not only just give the paper drawing and the designs, they have to work with the engineers and do visit the site very regularly to see whether the design that was thought out is actually getting implemented, or did we think of certain design ideas which are difficult to implement. No, you can imagine on paper, you can imagine whatever you want to imagine. You can create a staircase from Earth to Moon on paper. Okay, very easy. You have seen some pictures where such staircases are also shown from Earth to Moon. All right, but one has to be mindful of what is implementable with the current technology. Okay. So all these activities are the core activities of any design work, whether it is textile design or whether it is interaction design or a furniture design or a building design or an exhibition design, whatever. All these activities do take place. So how to understand activities? So an activity, what is an activity? It is a transformative interaction between actors and the object. Okay, an activity results in some transformation. Okay, transformation of the object on which the activity is performed, and maybe the transformation of the subject also. For example, if you go to the gymnasium, there is some transformation of the object that you perform the exercise on, and there is a transformation of you who is exercising. Your body improves, you become healthier. Okay. So there is a transformation taking place in any activity. This transformation could be with the object, transformation could be in the subject, or it could be in both. So activities, what all the elements of the activities? You have a desired outcome of the activity, and the activity is performed with a desired outcome. Activity involves one or more subjects, the performers of the activity. Activities involve one or more objects on which the activity is performed. Activities are performed in space, in a certain space. Okay, activities are performed with the help of certain tools. Activities are performed following certain rules. And activities are performed in a community, because same object is used by different performers in different time for different purposes. So there is a community. It's not a single solo activity. There is a community. Yeah? Hello? Is there a question? No? Okay. And then there is a division of labor. Different people have different roles to play. And they have to follow certain rules in following. Hello? What is this disturbance I'm getting? Is there a question?
That's your bum.
Okay. So, and activity comprises of actions, the micro level actions which themselves comprise of operations. Okay. This is how, if you understand an activity, then you can see how can you influence. Remember the technology or the designed object. What is this?
Guys, क्या disturbance है ये? Gaurav, can we quickly just try to isolate this person and remove him?
I think Punyavardhan has the control. I am not a host or co-host.
Sir, ID faculty.
Not under it.
जी Punyavardhan.
Is there an outsider here?
Sir, I think this is a...
Can you just scan through?
Yes, sir, I'm just doing that.
And maybe because we have, I think, multiple disciplines. So design is there. The only one.
So can I suggest one thing? Can we put everyone in a waiting room and then just let them in one by one? And it take like 2 minutes.
That might.
Yeah, but because no one needs to leave the meeting that way, we can just, I think there are 50, 60 participants. We can quickly do it.
I can identify 4 or 5 which I don't know. People, the rest, most of them I know.
So Milind can do that. Milind said his students are there, so he can do that.
Yes.
Okay, sir.
Who is
so,
name?
sir, can I?
Yes, sir.
Milind, sir, should I just name a few which I don't know, because that will be faster, I think. And you can tell
I will tell you my students who are there. Umesh Kumar, Anuj Verma from Computer Science Department.
Yes, sir.
Samarth Srivastava, Himanshu and Aman and Gaurang from EC department. Okay, they are my students.
Okay. And Gaurang, you. Okay.
Yes, he's also my student.
I'll just quickly
Samarth is there.
go through.
Samarth is there. He's also my student.
There is one.
Akshat, you have 3 accounts. Akshat Jain, you have been logged in by 3 accounts. Is it all yours?
No, sir. There's only 1 account of mine.
Other 2.
So the other 2, Akshat, I think we can remove.
So remove all the 3 Akshat Jain, put them in the waiting room, and then allow the authentic one in.
They have left.
Okay.
Mine is a profile
The
picture
one
of
with the
cycle.
photo is the authentic.
Yeah. The other one's just left.
The scenery one, Akshat Jain.
Yeah. We understand now. There is one person called San, S-A-N. Who is that?
That's
she's the
Samyukta. That's our student. Yeah.
Right.
I strangely see another Gaurav J. Sir, you can remove the.
Purnival, can we
I
quickly?
don't know why my name is also appearing twice.
And I'll make you the host and you do it.
Yes, I'll do that. Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll
You
just
can make
make
the
it.
co-host also.
Yeah, let's turn on the waiting room
Okay.
so that.
Done it, huh? You check it.
Oh, there was a voice again, I think. Gaurav, you are from 2 accounts, right?
No, I'm supposed to be one account. I don't know why it's showing my name twice. So you can remove the non-host Gaurav. But I can do it myself now. 1 second, please.
Yeah. And it has changed its name to H now. Guys, this
Okay.
is so silly. Disrupt.
Okay, I've put the H into waiting room.
This is just.
I think they have left.
Please turn on the waiting room now. I think we can.
Should we continue? The H has been removed from the meeting.
If the waiting room is on now, we can continue. Let's see. I keep an eye on.
Yeah, okay.
Shall I?
So we'll kind of keep it. Yes, sir, please continue.
Yeah, please.
We'll keep
Okay,
it
thank
track
you.
on the-
Thank you for your help. Thank you for your help. That's okay. It is another alteration of the human activity, and that we can see that technology has, if it is not used correctly, it can create problem. Okay. So let us move on. So that is how to dissect an activity, and this is very, very important tool to understand how to understand an activity and what to understand in an activity, because as a designer, you want to influence, you want to shape the activity often. Okay. So for that, you will have to understand that activity. So let us do this exercise with the activity of the design itself. So let us, how engineering and technology can influence design. What aspect of what aspects in the definition, or what aspects in the configuration of the activity are likely to be possibly influenceable by technology? Can people help me identify what aspect can get modified because of a new technology? What aspect of design or what aspect of activity that you want to design something for can get influenced? Yeah.
The bulkiness of objects, like for example TVs before, now the technology has changed. We've got slimmer, what do you call those, LCDs and stuff like that.
Okay. So what can get modified?
The bulkiness and the space.
No, that is a property. That is a property. So forget that property. Right now, just tell me what can get modified in an activity. In an activity, what can get modified because of technology?
We can alter human behavior.
Okay, we can.
Technology and design.
Perfect. So subjects' behavior can alter. What else can alter?
The platform on which we can design things can also be altered and modified. Like in the previous generations, there used to be big labs to design one single thing, and now everything can be done in a small tablet.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. What else can be? What all can undergo a change because new technology is available or advanced technology is available?
So it's also the method of interaction with the product.
Humans
Okay.
can be replaced
Okay.
with
Time
AI.
can be saved, I think.
In fact, all this which is in this color change can get modified because of new technology. Your desired outcome may change. Earlier, you were performing the activity for some outcome. Now, you may have a desired outcome which is different, maybe an extended outcome, an expanded outcome. Okay, some additional outcome is added to that. The subject's behavior will change. The object on which the activity is performed, that can change because of the new technology. Earlier, one was the rickshaw wala was working on the handle and was paddling the rickshaw. That was the object one was working. But in the auto rickshaw, there is no paddling required by the driver. One will just have to control the steering wheel. Okay, so the object on which the activity is to be performed will change because of the new technology. That would possibly decrease the fatigue of the subject. That will make the activity more comfortable, or less pollution, less polluting, or things like that. The space in which the activity is performed can change because of the technology. Earlier, you were having small shops, but mall has given large shops where so many items can be sold under the same roof. The tool for performing the activity may change. Rules with which the activity is performed may change. The community will change. The division of labor will change. So everything in the activity can change. You know, something may change, something may not. That depends upon what is the nature of the activity and what is the nature of the technology that is being brought up. It potentially, theoretically speaking, it has the potential to change all these aspects of some activity. Okay. The value that the stakeholder is expecting can change, the context can change, the requirements can change, the constraints can change, everything can change. So whatever is involved in design, all that can change because of new technologies and engineering tasks, and the activities that are performed, all of it can change because of the new technology. And that's how it is to be understood. And let us see what kind of major changes have happened in the past in the technology. These are the 4 major changes that have happened in the technology. It's called 4 industrial revolution. You know, one started around 350 years ago, and then another one, second industrial revolution, third one, and recently the 4th one has got started. Okay, what was the first one's gift to us? You have studied the history. Can somebody tell me, what did the first industrial revolution give us? Which was not existing before, and which changed the society, which changed the human activities, which gave new businesses. Yes, what happened after first industrial revolution? What was the main thing that came into existence? Yeah?
Batteries, steam engine.
Steam engine, yes. Steam engine was one of the major contributions of the, one major inventions that happened, and railways happened, you know, because of that steam engine. Before that, transportation was a bulky affair and it was a difficult affair. Cities came into existence because of the steam engine, because so many factories could have so much of energy locally produced because of the steam engine. So steam became, at that time, a very neat source of energy. Otherwise, the whole work was to be done by humans or by the water energy. So steam gave this power to create tremendous amount of energy, but it was bulky. You know, steam boilers were heavy. You know, our mechanical engineering colleagues in the Institute of Engineering Technology can show you all that. Okay, the boilers had to be there to generate the steam, and that steam had to be passed through pipes and then had to be maneuvered so that certain things can be moved with it. Textile mills came into existence because, so the hand loom got replaced by, you know, mechanical loom factories, and, you know, cities like London became populated because of, and textile industry flourished. Even in India, in Mumbai, it flourished. Okay, so steel industry, because of steam engine, became a possibility, and, you know, so lot of industrial activity happened because of the steam engine. That was a very, very high tech of its time. You know, it transformed the world completely. Okay, it gave us a very good source of energy, and an amount of energy that we didn't have access to before. Earlier, we were only depending upon some natural forces like water or animal forces or human energy. So, and because we needed humans, so we were exploiting a larger population of human society. Slaves were there because you needed cheap energy. So societies were having slaves. Okay, not that they had the intention to have slaves. That was not the only reason, because the technology was poor, so they had slaves, because they needed people to generate energy. So a lot of slavery happened in this part of the world as well as in that part of the world. Okay. Then second industrial revolution happened when electricity came, and that became a very neat, even a cleaner and a neater source of energy. Okay. Everything that was made in the first industrial revolution and before, it was empowered, it was energized by electricity. You could put electric, and then batteries were invented. Okay, mass production became a possibility. The conveyor belt system could become a possibility. Okay, so Ford designed this conveyor belt system. Okay, and through a wire you could transfer tremendous amount of energy from one place to another, and even long distances. Steam could not be transferred long distance, but electricity could be. And just through a wire, you don't need a pipe anymore. So that was a wonderful, great invention of its time. And so anything that was created, you put electricity to it, and it does not require men to run it, or it does not require some steam boiler there. Earlier, wherever the steam was to be used as energy, you need a boiler there because it can't be transported long distance. But with electricity, you could transfer it long distance, and you could, whatever activity or whatever machines were running, whatever device was running earlier with steam, you could now put electricity there, and it's a much cleaner way. The miniaturization happened because of electricity. Bulky things became smaller because of electricity. The energy source became very, very small. And then the batteries got invented, and beautiful torch and many such products got designed. Okay, because battery was available. So you had that element. Earlier, the design element that we were using were only having formal properties. The designers were using only the formal properties or the physical properties. Now, with the industrial revolution, they could have elements that could provide energy to other elements to work. So one could conceive of designs where some element is the energy producing device, and then it became miniature, like just a simple battery could provide energy, and many new devices became available. You know, a lot of new devices, because you could have an element that became a source of energy. You, rather than depending upon the human energy or the steam, which was expensive, this local source of energy empowered the designers to create a lot of new beautiful designs for industrial use as well as for domestic use, for aesthetic purposes. A lot of designs got created. And then the third revolution happened around 60-70 years ago, when the computers started coming in and electronics was maturing, and the new design elements started becoming available, like memory, processor. Okay, so a lot of new things could happen, a lot of miniaturization further. While the first industrial revolution and the second industrial revolution primarily gave a new source of energy, which were cleaner and more easily manageable, and in the form of battery, we even had an energy source where we could store energy. Before that, we could not store energy in a easier manner. Okay, now we could store the energy in a very easy manner and manageable manner. Okay, now in third revolution, we have another dimension getting added to it with the computer and electronics, that we had elements that could act as controllers. Do this when this happens. If this happens, do this. This kind of control function earlier was being handled by people. Now you could put a design element there. Okay, which people started calling some intelligence, some smartness. If this happens, if there is sun light, then do this. If there is no sunlight, then do this. Electronics added there, processor added there, or creates many such use cases where if then this, if so then this, if so then this, if not so then that, things like that. Okay, make decisions So some other elements will some elements will decide what other elements can do in the event, in a certain event.
आपके toothpaste में नमक है क्या?
What is this? What is this?
2 Shreyans. One with an H. I think we should remove him also. Gaurav, can you do that? I have my eye.
Yes, doing that.
There are 2 Shreyanses. One, yes.
Left. Person left or you removed, Gaurav?
I removed the one with the SH.
Okay. I just like 5 seconds back, I just figured out there are 2 Shreyanses and suddenly this happened.
Strange though. It's still in. Okay. So please continue. Sorry for the disturbance.
Okay. So third revolution gave many different kind of design elements. It gave memory, it gave processor, it gave controller. The new design element it was memory and controller. New possibilities can emerge. Okay, if there are 2 people, do this in the room. If there are 5 people, then do this. If there are 10 people, then do this. If there is only 1 person, then do this. If there is no person, then do this. Okay, this kind of thing can become possible very easily using electronics and computer. Okay, that's the controller function. And now the fourth revolution, which has started around 15-20 years ago, okay, and it is going on very in a high speed. It is characterized by artificial intelligence. It is characterized by big data, huge amount of data that is available, because of a lot of sensors that are available. Billions of sensors are getting installed all over the world, sensing so many things. You yourself at your home have got so many sensors already, and it is going to expand in an exponential way. The world has become hyper connected. Everything is connected with everything. People are connected with people. Doesn't matter where they are. Okay, what time they are. That is, people are connected with things, and things are connected with people and things, other things. Okay, so things are connected with things are connected with people, and people are connected with people. Hyper connected world. Everything is connected with everything, and because of that connectivity, new possibilities are emerging. Of course, new problems are also emerging, and that need to be taken care of. And so IoT, you may have heard the word Internet of Things. So that's hyper connectivity. Okay, so these 4 industrial revolutions have broadly happened in the last 3.5 centuries, and it has impacted the world of design greatly. The designs that were coming up before industrial revolution were of certain type. The designs that came after first industrial revolution were of different type. The textile that was available before industrial revolution 1 was of different nature. The textile that became available after first industrial revolution was different. New materials became available. Okay, lighter materials became available. And after every industrial revolution, some new materials have become available. And even now, new manufacturing processes became available. Like after fourth industrial revolution, what is the new manufacturing process that has become available? Anybody knows? Any student, do you know what is the new manufacturing process that is available after fourth industrial revolution, and which is really expanding very rapidly?
3D printing, sir.
Hello, who said that?
Yashovardhan.
Who said that?
Yashovardhan.
So that's the correct answer. 3D printing. Such thing did not happen earlier. Earlier, the manufacturing was subtractive. Okay, you have to have the lathe, etc., where the metal is subtracted from some material is subtracted from the material, and then that's how the shape is given. Now 3D printing is giving additive manufacturing. Okay, so a lot of developments in the manufacturing technology, a lot of developments in artificial intelligence, and that is really, in the first, second, and third revolution, they changed the work of the designer in the sense that they gave them new materials to work on. They gave them new technologies for manufacturing the designed objects. Okay, to produce. Certain technologies allowed mass production, certain technologies did not allow mass production. Okay, before first industrial revolution, mass production was impossible. It was only handicraft. Okay, after first industrial revolution, some mass production started happening, and then this mass production expanded greatly after second industrial revolution. Okay, every middle class surged because of these industrial revolutions. Art objects could be purchased by not so rich people also, because mass production of the art was possible. Earlier, only the handicrafts were available, and only the rich could afford such art. Now poor people could also afford objects of art at their home, and utensils and artistic utensils. A lot of design happened because of this manufacturing, and it will be very interesting for all the interested people to really explore what was the impact of first revolution on the designer's work in a particular sector: textile design, fabric design, dress design, or utensil design, or painting, or whatever. Or how did the photography as a technology influence the artists? That's another very interesting story to read about. Okay, new form of art emerged because of this technology. Okay, earlier it was not an art, but later on it became an art. Photographers are great artists today. Okay, so every technology has been so first three revolutions gave the power to use different materials and to manufacture the designed things using advanced technologies. The fourth revolution is changing something even more fundamental, and this is very, very interesting for the design community. Okay, it is certainly giving new materials, it is certainly giving new ways of manufacturing the goods using new manufacturing technologies, but the third thing that it is doing, and that is very, very interesting, that the earlier three technologies had not done, because the third technology is AI driven and big data driven. It is empowering, it is giving new tools to think with. It is giving thinking tools. Earlier, the technologies were not thinking tools. The thinking was to be done with just on the paper and pencil, with the paper and pencil. The thinking tools were not changing, were not because of the Industrial Revolution. Designers were still designing with the help of paper and pencil. With the fourth Industrial Revolution, we have a great advantage that we have computer, which is becoming as a thinking tool for designers. Okay, and now you have AI-powered CAD tools. The CAD tools became available around 40-50 years ago. Okay, computer graphics and things like AutoCAD have been there around for several decades. For example, I remember having learned AutoCAD in my mid-80s. Okay, it was already a very mature and very popular tool at that time. Okay, so AutoCAD has been around for, and it has so many versions have been coming out, and it has been evolving, and so many other tools. And so, okay, so CAD tools became available to the designers. Okay, rich databases became available to the designers. Okay, and with the help, templates became available to the designers, and now artificial intelligence. Adobe tools. Can somebody tell me the artificial intelligence facilities in some Adobe tool that you have used? Yeah, students.
So content aware fill in Photoshop.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else?
It uses Adobe Sensei artificial intelligence to analyze the surroundings and fill appropriate content.
Perfect. Perfect. Anything else? Any other example? So Adobe uses a lot of AI. The artificial intelligence team at Adobe is very, very strong. Lot of AI in Adobe tools. Anyone else? That was a good example. Any other example?
Sir, in some softwares, we have the feature that it automatically makes new templates. First, there are new templates as it is available, and then it can also make new templates.
Perfect. So the first help that became as a thinking tool is give the templates readily available, pre-designed. But now with the AI, one can design new templates. One can go on learning. So machine learning is helping a great deal in the field of design. And we will see later how there are paintings that are being created with AI. Okay, and those paintings are being sold for lakhs of dollars. First AI painting I'll show later was sold for around $4.28 lakh. Just 2 years ago. Okay, doesn't look so great, but because it is an AI created painting, it got the price that a Picasso painting would get. Okay, so the technology is giving us, and will continue to give, new materials. The nanotechnology, lighter material, durable material, the clothes that will not get dirty, the clothes that will not require the ironing, and many other such things will happen and are happening. The clothes that can have integrated flexible electronics, and you can have electronics layered, printed. Instead of fabricating the electronic circuit, you can print the electronic circuit on the fabric, and then if you can print it, the electronics, then you can have some software also. You can have a program stored there. So an intelligent cloth is not a distant dream anymore. Such prototypes have already been demonstrated. Okay, so huge possibilities for you to imagine. Huge, the clothes that will change their color. So different kind of possibilities will happen. The new materials, new ways to fabricate things using the existing material, using additive as well as subtractive technologies. Okay, automated, less polluting, speedier. Okay, new and even more than that is tools to think with. So designers who are not really creative and so the skill-oriented work will actually reduce. If somebody is doing only skill, like earlier in King's courts, there were a lot of people with good handwriting who were hired because they had to write the inscriptions. Okay, so they were people with the skill of good handwriting. That's all. Nobody hires a person with good handwriting anymore. Why? Why? Somebody will tell me.
That that skill has lost its importance in the sense that
that skill has become it is not important anymore, because computers give us so many beautiful fonts, and people like me with very bad handwriting can write reasonably good looking slides. Okay, so that skill is lost its value. Similarly, so there are in the designer's work, if there are a lot of work that is skill oriented. A good percentage of the work is skill oriented, which is not really so much thinking oriented. All that work will gradually and is already transferred to AI and automation. Okay, so the designers are free to do more thinking. Even so we'll see more on this. Okay, let us see how over the civilization years. So what you see on the designers create static structures and frameworks, right? So there is no movement there. They are static structures, or there could be frameworks. Okay. On the top left, you see a fork, which is an Egyptian fork. Okay, for bread toasting. Okay. This is the ancestor of the today's advanced toaster that we all have at our home. Okay. So you have different kind of structures. You have fabric there, you have dress there, you have a rug there, furniture there, jewelry there, and at the support for the handicapped or old people, or you have the 3D printed sculpture at the bottom right. Okay, that's a 3D printed sculpture. Okay, so as technologies emerged, we have this changing. And this will continue to change. New material, new kind of materials is coming for 3D printing. Every year we have some discoveries, some inventions that this is lighter, this is cheaper, more durable. Okay. So technologies will make this job of creating is very interesting and more powerful, more beautiful, more useful, static structures and frameworks, with more affordable also. Okay, this kind of sculpture that you see at the bottom, earlier, if this kind of sculpture only very rich could afford. But with 3D printing, it will be possible to have this kind of sculpture made available to poor people also, or to lower middle classes also. The art becomes affordable. They can also have beautiful things at their homes. Okay, so static structures and frameworks has been one kind of design and will continue to be there, where the elements are static. So you are relying on the properties, formal properties and the physical properties there only, and nothing else. Okay, the material can be different, the purpose can be different, the value that you create for the stakeholder can be different. It can be 2D, it can be 3D. Okay, or it can just be a visual representation on a paper or on a cloth. Okay. Next level of sophistication is structures and frameworks with movable parts. Okay, and so there is a movement possibility. So the structure becomes flexible or it becomes kinetic. There is a movement taking place. So all these are examples of flexible or kinetic structures. This lion, this is an image from a temple where this couch in the mouth is actually a revolvable couch. So it's very interesting how in that era they could fabricate a stone structure where this couch can actually be rotated. Okay, this is an ancient objects which has movement and flexibility. The jewelry, the objects are connected, but they are not rigid connections. There is a flexibility between at the joints, the flexible, adaptable flexibility. You can raise the height, etc. You can raise the height. You can fold it, unfold it. You know, it's flexibility, movement. Okay, all these structures are basically different from the earlier structures and frameworks which were static. This is movement and flexibility which is coming up. This is opening new possibilities, and so the sources of energy are required. So certain electricity and solar power and various kinds of technologies, mechanical engineering contributed a lot to create various kinds of joints. There are thousands of different kinds of joints that are very well understood by mechanical engineering experts, and those different kind of designs can give different kind of inter element movement. You want things to move linearly relative to each other. You want them to move in a revolutionary way or different kinds. So there are, it is possible. There are gears. There are different kind of various kinds of tools and elements are readily available to create a variety of movement. And put a motor at the connect a motor there, put electricity, and you can create automatically moving objects of area any type very easily. Okay, so this is so it can be human powered or it can be electricity powered. Okay, so variety. So technology helps you to imagine new kind of kinetic and flexible objects. So you have new materials, again, you have new ways of fabricating. So this is, for example, a 3D, this revolving thing is 3D printed. And so it is kinetic, new material, and okay, like that. You could create spaces. So space creation has been an ancient source of happiness for human beings. This is a pyramid, the Giza's pyramid, famous one. Okay. Space, this is Ajanta's cave, a dissection of Ajanta's cave. This is Roman stadium where the gladiators fought. And this is famous Tanjavur temple. I don't know how many of you have been there. Those of you who have not been there, please go and visit this magnificent temple in south of India near in Tanjavur. Okay. And this is Taj space. Okay. And this is Rashtrapati Bhavan, that Lutyens Delhi, you know, beautiful spaces. So comprising of various structures and frameworks. So this has been changing as the technology was changing, you know, and will continue to change. We will have new construction materials. We will have new fabrication technologies. Prefabrication has become very common these days. It is very easy to create buildings in a couple of months now. What earlier Taj took 20 years to 20,000 people in 20 years. That was the labor that went into making of Taj. Today, if somebody has money and wants to create to pick up that kind of a project, it will not take 20,000 people and it will not take 20 years. It will be done much earlier. Okay, okay, because of the prefabrication technologies that is available. A lot of things will become prefabricated from the factories. You have seen that while the seeing the fabrication or the construction of the flyovers, etc., in your own cities. You know, suddenly pillars come and you know they get erected, and you know very quickly the flyover is ready, or very quickly the metro lane is ready. And now another space is becoming a very, very common space, and the virtual space. You know, that's a mounted display. So you can create virtual spaces, not just the physical. You can create lots of virtual spaces and augmented virtual reality and augmented reality. and the structures are again virtual structures, virtual frameworks, and you can create very, very interesting spaces where interesting activities take place in a virtual environment, a virtual space rather than in the physical space. Okay. For example, many tourism companies have started offering some virtual tourism in this time. The hotels are expanding their business to give virtual experience to their customers of their hotels rather than the real experience during this COVID era. Okay. So virtual reality and augmented reality is creating a lot of new artificial spaces, and that's going to open huge possibilities for the designers. You can create any amount of any kind of virtual space without the constraints of the material. You can imagine very, very interesting virtual spaces, and let the kids enjoy that, let the adults enjoy that. And virtual reality is going to be even more popular than the movies. Okay, we'll see that. The fourth kind of objects and the artifacts that the designers create and have been creating since ancient times and will continue to create are the clockworks. Things happen as per a time cycle. This is an example of that. As per a time cycle, it follows a certain certain clock cycle. This is the first commercial toaster. You could say this, around 100 years ago. This is a photograph of the first commercial toaster which popped out the bread after a certain time of, after heating. It was the first toaster that popped out the bread, and basically this design has evolved into these kind of toasters, and, but this clocked thing that after a certain time, certain thing will happen. Things happen at a predetermined time, things like fan rotate, washing machine, advanced washing machine, you set a timer. And so timer is becoming very, very important, and you can set interesting behaviors as per this very interesting fountain, that after 1 second this will happen, after 2 seconds this will happen. You can write a full script and put it in the computer and run the fountain under the control of the computer or a controller, and you can create very, very interesting fountains. Go visit Akshardham in Delhi, very beautiful fountain. Okay, and there are various kinds of clockworks can be created using it is very easy today to create clockworks because of the computer and the control electronics. Very, very easy to create clockworks. Earlier, creating clockworks was very, very difficult for designers. Now it is very, very easy. Okay, so you can combine the structures, framework, clockwork, motion, all put together. So a clockwork is also a motion there, also a structure there. So there is a structure with a motion and also a clockwork. All three things integrated. Okay. And then a control system, a closed loop control system. Okay, this was an open loop control system where there is an input and there is an output, and if you want to change the behavior, you have to switch on, the fan runs, you switch off, the fan stops. Okay, that kind of okay, or you change the speed of the fan and the fan speed changes. Okay, things like that. That's an open loop control object that you can design. Okay, engineers do this, and designers should also know this kind of basic control theory and create control systems, open loop based control systems and closed loop based control systems. That's another very interesting area that is open for you now. You have an input, you have the output coming out, and you sense the output and you change the input control signal in some way. And so this electric iron, this automatic iron is an example. You set it to a certain level of the heat, and the heating element works to heat it up, and then just keeps it at that level, doesn't heat it up further. Okay, or the geyser, you set up, and then it keeps the water warm, and then doesn't go on boiling it the water. There is a thermostat, switch off, switch on, switch off, switch off, or air conditioner. You set the temperature and it maintains that because of this closed loop control system. Refrigerator, or this car, cruise, you set up a certain speed and it maintains the speed. You don't have to keep pushing the accelerator. Okay, so this closed loop control systems are opening very beautiful opportunities and it is so easy to fabricate these kind of things again with the help of microprocessors, microcontrollers, etc. Arduino board, and you have that kind of thing in your syllabus. Very, very interesting to create that kind of systems, closed loop control systems, and innovative designers would create new form of even artistic objects that will really enrich our lives, create entertainment and enrich our lives. You go to Disneyland, there would be control, or a lot of such fun parks would get created. A lot of closed loop control systems can be added to the fun parks. They are already there. Okay. Finally, the smart systems. A lot of smart systems. This air conditioner, which is smart, which senses how many people, and then the spread of the cool air is according to the population. There is a self-balancing robo. You see this robo which is carrying a bottle, and it is not falling because it is a closed loop control system, and as well as it is sensing things. Okay, it is a smart system. This ball is not falling. It is a self-balancing table. This robo is cleaning the floor. It's a smart system. Okay, and this solar panel which is opening and rotating following the sun. Okay, so a lot of such designs, and this F-16 which is very, very sophisticated, and a lot of smartness there. Okay, so a lot of smart systems by integrating the ancient structural elements, the movement elements, and the smart element, the memory, the processor, AI, all put together, a lot of sensors, all of it is integrated to create very useful and even pleasing designs. It is, your imagination is the limit. You are almost as powerful as Brahma of one time. The earlier designers could create only static. Now you can create dynamic, smart systems, and create new kind of art also, and new kind of objects for human utilization. Okay, visual representations, beautiful representations on the virtual space, on the screen. Visual representations we have been making since centuries. This is a swastik symbol found in the famous Badami caves in Karnataka. Okay, visual representations symbolizing a lot of complex idea of philosophy. I'll not get into that philosophy, but you can find out what does it represent. An interconnected set of swastiks. Periodic table you all have seen in school days, a visual representation, so many data visualizations. And these are some old work that I did under Kapila Vatsyayan. I thought I'll show this as we were designing a lot of work for the Indian art and culture. These are the screenshots of the various interactive CD work that we did long ago, around 20 years ago. Okay, these are all screenshots of the computer software that was created. Okay, and then this is very new thing that is happening. Airports are using the data that is being captured, the flight data, to create art dynamically. So as the new data, it is fed by the computer. These are the panels, artistic panels that are created, and these are dynamic panels in the sense that as the data keeps changing every minute, the artwork keeps changing. So as you are walking through it, you see a different art every moment. It is the data which is captured, the flight data, etc., atmospheric data, etc., is represented as an art form. Okay, and this has happened. You can imagine this kind of public displays not only at the airport, at the railway stations, at the metro stations, underneath the flyovers. Flyovers have started putting some beautiful arts now as paintings, but time is not far away when this all will become technologically empowered, and panels will foldable panels will be there around the pillars of the flyovers, and you will have beautiful art emerging which is dynamic and representing something interesting. Okay, I will skip these things, and then I come to this. See, this is the projection coming, how the technology is changing now. What is the projection of the technology and engineering for the next few years? This is a graph till 2027. This is showing the additive manufacturing market size, how it is going to expand. See, currently in 2020, it is like, it is going to become more than 3 times in the next 5-6 years, 7 years. Okay, so the 3D printer is going to be greatly available, easily available, and 3D printing is going to transform the industry, and it is also going to transform the art market. Okay, and that is opening great opportunity. So for 3D printing, you got to create a 3D model and then push it into the 3D printer. We have a 3D printer in our workshop. When you come to the institute, you can have a look at it if you have not had a look at it, and you can even design and print something on the 3D printer that we have. Okay, and this is going to expand. This is going to be more affordable, and interesting things can be printed using 3D printer, and that's the opportunity for you. Okay, IoT installation base is again going to become like 3 times within next 5, 6, 7 years. Okay, lot more IoT is going to be available around the world, in your homes, in your vehicle, in your offices, in everywhere. The IoT is going to be available, sensing data, and it is going to be connected to the processor, to the cloud, and interesting things will happen. Interesting spaces will be created, and useful things will be done using this installation based. You have to imagine how you can leverage these technologies that are coming up. Okay, it is not just about sketching and painting. It is much more happening now in the world of design. This is automation. How the automation is going to expand in the next 5 years. You see, this is showing that in 2018, there was 29% automation of the human activities across the globe. This is going to be more than 50% by 2025. Lot of things are going to be automated, including decision making, which is currently like 20%. It is going to be like 30%. Okay, so thinking and decision making kind of tasks are also going to be automated. Okay, so interacting, we are already interacting with an automated tool. Okay, so a lot of automation is going to expand in all forms, and how you leverage that as a trend in your design thinking is up to your innovation and your thinking. Okay, global CAD market is expanding. You all are using CAD tools, or if the first years will start using CAD tools very shortly. Okay, this is going to expand greatly, and a lot more powerful CAD tools are going to be available, and much more cheaper CAD tools are going to be available very soon. Okay, software people are working very hard in enriching the CAD industry. Okay, this is the game market. You should be interested to know this. This is the expansion of the game market in the next couple of years. This is 2018. This is 2025. The game market is expanding this much. This is the PC multiplayer games, and this is the smartphone game market. See how much expansion is going to take place in the game market. These are the opportunities for you to leverage. A lot of business happening in the game market. A lot more people are going to be using the games. A lot more games are going to be available, and the design people have a big role to play there. And not only the games, this is the virtual goods used in the game market. It's not only the real goods, the virtual goods. You create interesting goods. Can anybody tell me some example of some virtual good? Those who have played games would know. Can somebody tell me?
Sir, there is currency in that games in which we can.
Perfect. Perfect. Any other virtual good? Currency is an example. Any other virtual good?
So the costume your character wears is called a skin. So you spend the costume your character wears.
Costume. Perfect.
Skin.
Costume, weapon, all those kind of virtual goods. So you can create interesting. So there is a game already, and you can create a virtual good and sell it in the market there, and people buy the virtual good with the real money. It is not only the real virtual money that is used. Okay, so these are the new kind of market expansions that are taking place, and if you are an innovative designer, you can create very innovative virtual goods and leverage it within the game market or even otherwise. Okay, natural language processing market. Look at it. This is going to be like 10 times in next 6 years. 10 times. Okay, from $8 billion to $80 billion in the next 6 years. Can you give me an example of natural language processing device? Come on, you guys would know.
Siri and Google Assistant.
Alexa.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a natural language. You speak to a device. Okay, and it does interesting things for you. Okay, so natural language market is going to expand 10 times in the next 6 years. That's an opportunity for you. Know these technologies and incorporate these technologies in conceiving and designing interesting objects and artifacts. Artificial intelligence market is going to be hugely expanding in next 5 years itself. You know, within next 5 years, it is going to be like 6 times or 5 times. See, more than is around 6 times. Within next 5 years, artificial intelligence is getting into everything. Okay, the CAD tools are getting transformed with artificial intelligence. We have already spent some time understanding how designers' work is going to transform. So somebody who is very good hand at and skill with something, you know, those kind of skills as the great handwriting skill has become irrelevant over the time, except for the very artistic purpose that, yeah, great handwriting. But otherwise, for the functional purposes, industrial purposes, it has lost its value. Similarly, many other artistic skills will lose their value, but artistic thinking will always be valuable. So the designers will become more and more thinking type and less of skill type, because that skill-oriented work will be done by the machine, by the computer. You know, you have created a design for computer screen, laptop. You want to transport it to the mobile screen, you have a tool to do that. You don't have to have a person redo the whole work. Okay, or you have created a design with some kind of background, you want to change all that, you want to change the new configuration, you have a tool already doing that. You learn, machine learning is going to empower the world of designers in a great way. Find out how machine learning is changing the world of design. You know, find out, read more about it, how AI is changing the designer's work. Find out, you'll find many papers on that. Okay, so you have to be ready, not for your first job, you have to be ready for your last job. So you have to be ready for 40 years of career. Okay, in that 40 years of career, the computers are going to do a lot of tasks that the designers are doing manually today, and those manual tasks will not be done by the people anymore. Those tasks will be done by the machine. So in that era, the man will have to be more productive in idea creation, in imagining things. Okay, imagination would be a strength area of the man. Machine would come out to rescue, but men would always have an edge on that, hopefully, at least in next couple of years. So sharpen your imagination is what I would say. And here are some examples of how AI is changing the design. Okay, so this painting, this is the painting that I mentioned, which was sold for more than $4 lakh 2 years ago, $4.28 to be precise, 2 years ago, in an exhibition in New York, in an auction in New York. I think at Christie's, that's a famous art auction place. And in the same auction, Picasso was also sold for the same price. Now, this painting has been created by computer, not by men, completely by computer. 15,000 paintings, portraits in several centuries were analyzed by the AI algorithm, machine learning algorithm, and it learned how to draw the paintings, and it created a painting out of that. Okay, on the left top, you have the first humanoid painter. It is a robo, which is in the form of human body, and this is the first humanoid painter, and the art exhibitions of the paintings done by this humanoid has already been held. And these are the developments of the last 2 years or so. And down you have a robo sculpting the marble to create a statue. Okay, so art is getting transformed by artificial intelligence and fourth industrial revolution technology, robo, machine learning, big data, in a big way, and new materials are coming up, and that is opening huge new amount of possibilities for you. Now, having said that, now I come back local. I become local as to, in this context, what are we doing in the Institute of Engineering and Technology? What are we? So I'll just spend 10 minutes explaining what we do in the Institute of Engineering and Technology. So we run this BTech, MTech, and BCA, and MSc and PhD program. in various disciplines. We have a computer science and engineering BTech program, and we give specializations in data science, artificial intelligence, IoT, robotic process automation, cloud computing, big data, information security. Okay, and we have electrical electronics engineering, where we give specializations in embedded system and IoT, digital systems, communication and power systems. Mechanical engineering, where we give a specialization in robotics and automation and automobile design and engineering. Okay, where the focus is not on the body design, focus is on the machine design, the system design. Okay, the civil engineering having specializations in structure engineering, infrastructure engineering, the highway, etc., construction management and environment engineering. And this year we have started a Bachelor of Computer Application program. It is open to all the students of all the 12th class. Okay, and we have MTech program, 5 MTech programs in data science, health, safety, environment, embedded system and Internet of Things, automation and robotics, and artificial intelligence and machine learning. We have also started an MSc program in data analytics, and we do a PhD also in various kinds of engineering, mathematics, and science also. Okay, and this is our strength. We are around 40 faculty members, all full-time faculty members. Okay, 80% of our faculty members are PhDs from renowned places. Okay, and we have faculty members in computer science, electrical, electronics, mechanical, civil, and of course maths and science. More than 70% of our faculty members have more than 10 years of work and research experience, and more than 65% faculty members have studied at least for one degree at some IIT or BITS Pilani or Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata, or some NIT or IIIT. Okay, and around 20% have even studied abroad. Our faculty's former students at their earlier places, our faculty has experience in teaching at various other places before joining JKLU, and their students from those places are working at these organizations: Google, Intel, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, Cisco, Honeywell. You name a company of the current economy or of the old economy, and our students of our faculty are working there. Also teaching at Carnegie Mellon, Imperial College, Maryland, IIT, IIM, etc. Okay, and these are our collaboration partners. We have collaboration with University of Florida, where students can go for a semester, and they can go to University of South Carolina, that's a AI Institute, and other universities in St. Cloud University, US, Amsterdam, in Netherlands, and IIT Gandhinagar. And we have various industry collaborations, IBM, Cisco, UiPath, etc. Okay, so we are as an institute geared to the technological revolution that is taking place, and we are happy to collaborate with the design students and faculty to usher in a new era of technology-driven design. And I end this presentation by showing. Do you recognize this image? What is this? Somebody should be able to recognize this. This is a very famous. Oh yeah, somebody saying something. Yeah. No.
This is Ardhanarishwara.
Ardhanarishwara. It is a modern rendering of Ardhanarishwara. The image is the imagination of the form is by a modern artist, but it is Ardhanarishwara. And okay, so you have Shiva and Parvati, half each, combined into one figure, and it is dancing. And it is a belief that the Srishti is created because of this dance of union of the Shiva and Parvati. So Ardhanarishwara is that, and the left and the right mind, the creative and the analytical mind together, that is the feminine and the masculine energies, the creative and the analytical energies have to be combined to create the new world. And I invite you all to join hands with the faculty and the students of the Institute of Engineering and use our laboratories when you come to the institute to create and imagine, conceive interesting things, design interesting things, and develop interesting things. Collaborate. Thank you very much. Any questions, I will welcome.
Okay, while others think about a question, I would like to just add a very excellent presentation. But just I was curious, like an observation actually, that when you have put the definition of design, it's more activity driven. So you have taken it as a verb, designing as a verb.
Yes.
So what about, maybe you can expand it a little bit on design as a noun. So you look at a design, and designers look at things more like a combination of art and science, we call it. So they may be giving importance to activity or the verb part of it, but they would also like to generally at the beginning, at least, because we have a lot of first year students, they will be focusing on the looks, like the verb.
So this
noun part of it.
Yeah, I got you. I got your point.
You can tell a little bit about the noun part.
Yeah, I got it. The noun is actually embedded in this verb. Okay. So when I look at it as a noun, what is it? It is a plan. It is that plan which is created to realize an artifact, a process, or an activity by integrating elements and satisfying the requirements and constraints. So design, if I have to give a synonym, which is to be used as a useful synonym, is a plan. That's the noun. It is an intent and a plan. So it is a conceptualization. It is an intent, developing an intention to create an activate artifact, process, or activity, and a plan. It is a plan. Design is a plan. It can be a visual plan. It can be a descriptive plan. It is essentially a plan, and art helps in imagining things. Okay, that's how I would put it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any students who would like to ask any questions?
Sir, as you said in the future that AI will take over the design and designers will be only known for design thinking. But I would like to add a point that designers, we will be running with the technology, like for creating application. Designers have to create the aesthetic, we have to study the behavior. The coding will be done by the engineers. But we as a designer, we have to study the human behavior, add the aesthetics. So there is a need in future.
No, I didn't say it. I mean, that's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. No, I did not say that the designers will not be needed. I said the designer's task would be more intellectual in the time to come. So you'll have to spend more time imagining things rather than just using your skills. You will have to more frequently use your mind. That is what I'm saying. And collaboration with the engineers would be even more common in the time to come. You are right on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the students? Any other even open thoughts?
So in your opinion, how big a deal is generative or dynamic art going to become? Or what do you like, how important do you think it is for designers to learn how to code?
See, designers should, so these are two different questions. One is the generative art that is related to, first part is the generative. I think right now there is a lot of curiosity about the generative art. That's why this painting, which does not look so exciting, I would not like to have such a painting on my wall. Okay, I would still love to have a human drawn painting on my wall rather than this. But people are excited by this possibility, and there will be a curiosity. It is a display of the power of the technology, and technology is maturing and is able to do this much. It is like it has reached a certain level of sophistication, and that sophistication is going to enhance at the time to come. So generative art would be generating a lot of curiosity in the next decade. You know, it's more and more people are going to be interested in it. I am very sure of that. And otherwise, that art piece would not have sold for $4.28 lakh because it has been purchased by an investor. Okay, so one is expecting further value addition to his investment. Okay, so generative art would expand in the time to come. It will become, and then ultimately it will make the art more affordable for many people. More human mind and hands would continue to create wonderful pieces of the art and will enrich our lives in the time to come. Second part of your question is about the coding. If you are, so two things there about coding. A, understanding what codes can do and giving their and collaborating with the coders. This much a designer should know, that what coding can do, what can be achieved by coding and what cannot be achieved by coding. This much a designer should know. And one should be able to collaborate with the engineers and the coders for developing the real software for that. This much every designer who is going to be active in the virtual world is going to be active in the digital space, because increasingly the design elements are going to be digital in nature, are going to be working in the virtual space. That they should know. If they don't know, their possibilities would be limited to the old, and one can make a great career even without that. That is okay. But if you do that, if you know that, then your possibilities will expand and you will be working on the contemporary kind of design. And okay, much more opportunities would open up for that. Okay, knowing coding per se very deeply, I don't think that is required, but some familiarity is important so that you can interact with the coders and work with them. But yes, there are people who do both, who are designers as well as coders. Many of my old students who did their BTech in computer science have done their second or the third degree in design, and who know both the things. And so with that understanding, they can, and there are many designers who have learned coding and are able to quickly test it. Their dependence on the others reduces and they are able to quickly test and develop their prototypes. They don't have to develop the production system. That can be done by the engineers, but for developing a lot of prototypes, little bit of familiarity with the coding would be useful and helpful. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Maybe we can take one or two more last question before the time runs out. We still have the floor open. Any other questions? So to Goel, one thing I also agree with is that since I started learning softwares, whether it was for animation or visuals, now suddenly there is a lot of democracy coming in, because a lot of softwares which were for professionals have been turned for laymen. For example, the graphic design softwares of Adobe Package, now suddenly Canva has existed and other platforms also, so you don't have to become a graphic designer just to achieve good, whether it's a poster or good graphics, because they've given you templates. I'm not saying that will take away the job of a graphic designer, but at the same time, at least the availability of somebody using good graphics is not just with a graphic designer anymore. Similarly, coding, like someone was saying, data visualization was very heavily coded. You can say coding centric, but now they have also created some platforms like Tableau, which allows laymen to understand and work with data and visualize it. So I think the future is that more and more technologies and how do I say, you can say certain bits of engineering will be available to other people and certain bits of design is also being available to much wider audience. So I think a lot more collaboration and interaction is happening, which is open to not just, it's not discipline centric so much. And the boundaries are also getting a little, you can say, fizzling out. And I think more interaction is happening between disciplines because of that. So that's one point which I saw that you had mentioned, which is, I can see it happening right now. So any other questions, guys? Anyone would like to add or ask? Dr. Goel, would you like to, before we wrap up the session, would you like to add something for the students?
Collaborate. One word. Yes. Collaborate.
I'm also actually pretty big for this word now than ever before. Thank you so much, sir. So, any student would like to wrap up this session? Can someone please take a volunteer and just a vote of thanks to sir and something that you learned from the, a gist of your understanding from the session that Dr. Goyal has taken. And sir, on behalf of the design discipline, or you can say the department, I would like to thank that you have taken out your time to actually reach out to us and also give us a lot of insights and understanding. And in a way, the collaborate that you're saying, so this open channel of collaboration that you're opening is really appreciated. Thank you so much. And our students will be using it more and more. So maybe Taruni, would you like to just go ahead and close the session for us? A simple vote of thanks.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
So I really thank Dr. Goyal for doing this session. It was very informative, and a lot of us could correlate to whatever you said. And we understand the need of collaboration between engineers and designers. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Taruni.
Thank you, sir.
Sanjay sir, one last question, because we have management also. Your one last, like collaboration, which means collaboration between engineering, designers and management should also now seep in somehow. Any one-liner on the management part of the discipline, or you can say the importance?
From whom?
For all of us, actually, for engineers and designers as well.
See, business is important. It is the business that makes that idea reach to the people. If the business is not there, then even the most sophisticated idea, the best technology will not reach out to the people. So it is the business which is there in between. So engineers and designers are part of the Garbhagriha, I would say. Okay, together they have to work, run shoulder to shoulder, and business is required to make their creations reach to the people. And what is required by the people and what will be acceptable to the people, again, business can help in understanding that. So what to design, what to develop, again, business can help a lot in that. So it is actually this triangle which can really solve the problems of the society and create interesting and enriching projects and products. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. So I would like to formally close the session now, and we all thank Dr. Goyal for his time and his team, Dr. Milind, and the students who are here, all present for the design. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Jyoti Prakash, sir.
Thank you.